Recording in progress.
Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Franklin's Conservation Commission meeting for January 6, 2022. Due to the concerns regarding the COVID-19 virus, we will be conducting a remote virtual Conservation Commission meeting. In an effort to ensure citizen engagement and comply with open meeting law regulations, citizens will be able to dial into the meeting using the provided phone number. It's on the agenda, or the link that's also on the agenda. If you have trouble accessing the link, please call on your phone and use the *6 to toggle between the mute, unmute, and *9 to raise your hand. If you wish to attend the meeting in person, the meeting is held in the council chambers, second floor in the municipal building. Let me start off by having the commissioners introduce themselves. Jeff?
Jeff Livingstone.
Jeff Milne.
Andrew Mazzucchelli.
Pat?
Richard Johnson.
Bob? Pat?
Hi, Pat Gallagher is present as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And we also have Brian Tabner, acting agent and director for the town.
Yeah, Brian Sobrenner. I am the acting conservation agent of several other things right now while we have people out sick and things of that nature.
And we also have Tyler as assisting.
Yeah, for planning and conservation.
Okay, so let me start off with the public hearings. We have an NOI for Washington Street. Brian, do you have any comments on?
Well, actually, the applicant has requested a continuance to the next meeting. A couple hours ago, I received an email requesting it. So other than that, I really don't have much to discuss unless you would like to get into any details about anything, but I don't think we need to do that.
This is a public hearing. If anybody has any comments they want to make about Washington Street, would you please sign in over here? And you are?
Hi, Karen Miller, 246 Washington. Happy New
Karen.
Year, everybody. Generally, when something's continued, it's posted on the internet, so we all don't have to come out and visit you guys, although we love seeing you. Does that not happen? You know, like on the agenda, it's usually posted continued.
Yeah, well, if it had been continued before a couple hours ago, I'm sure we would have tried to let everybody know, but I don't know, I'm sorry. But,
Sorry, I'm deaf, so that's why I'm looking at
no, it's all right. Normally, if it's continued a few days in advance or anything, we have time to get it out there and everything, but to be honest with you, I did not think to go to the website and change it to continue. But,
Okay. Yeah, that would be greatly appreciated, because
Sure.
everyone,
No, I
kind of
understand.
puts their schedule around it. It's year end at work, rushed
yeah.
out the door kind of thing.
Yeah,
So thank you,
understood.
would appreciate that. The other comment is kind of like a question that's more like a general question too, right? So on this particular piece of property, it was my understanding back years ago when they, when it came in front of the different boards, the conservation and such, there was a, I don't know if demand's the right word, but a requirement that they hook into town sewer. And it doesn't seem to be the requirement this time, and I have no understanding of this whatsoever. So is the Conservation Committee something that says, hey, it has to be hooked into sewer versus having a private? How's that determination made?
That's not us. That's
Yeah.
not conservation.
That's not, sorry, through the chair, that's not a conservation commission responsibility. That would
Okay.
more through the planning board approvals and things of that nature.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, Karen.
Can I make a clarifying comment?
Sure.
So just to clarify, just so people understand, so usually, historically, what we've been doing is that on the agendas, if something is continued from another meeting, it's actually listed as continued, being
That's true.
basically noting people that it has been continued, it is on the agenda, and it has been continued from another meeting. We typically have not been saying, we know this is going to be continued at a meeting, because usually we don't even know until we actually get here. So So there seems to be some confusion as to what continued means on the agenda. Now, if that's changed in the last couple of, months or so, that's changed, but that is not how it was described was not how we've been using the word continued on the agenda. Just to be clear.
No, understood, yeah. When you have an agenda and it says continued, it's continued from the last,
That means it
meeting.
has been
Right, I
continued.
understood,
It is a
yeah.
continued meeting.
Correct,
Right,
yes,
that's-
exactly, yeah.
That's how we've been doing it.
Yeah,
so.
but it is true to, if people, if we do find out between meetings, it would be nice to tell people somehow that it is. But I don't think on the agenda is actually the way to go. I think we need to put up notice out there some other way, but regardless.
Right. I'm just saying. So just to clarify some confusion, I think that's.
And I would also just note, while we are in this Zoom forum, to the extent anyone would prefer to log in via Zoom, your comments over Zoom count for the same as they do if you attend in person. So you really should feel free to utilize Zoom as long as we are able to, if that is easier for your schedule.
Thanks, Pat. Anybody else like to speak tonight?
Regarding Washington Street?
Washington Street, correct.
Okay. Well, Just
Please sign in.
sign in?
Yes, it is, please. Thank you, and you are?
John Marguerite, 213 Washington Street.
Hi, John.
So I'm right out front of this project. So I'd like to just start off by saying I missed the first couple of minutes. This meeting has been
Continued.
continued. Okay. So a couple of things. I don't know what kind of impact studies have been done on this piece of property yet. I'm not up to speed on that. I didn't find anything that was listed on the website. I had called and thank you for forwarding me the information that I asked for, but it's my understanding that there's supposed to be some kind of plan identification approved by the DEP commissioner. It's a floodplain, is that correct? That's what I read on one of the abutters notice I got. It was considered a floodplain or not? Do we know that yet?
It's
Is that
directly adjacent to floodplain, whether it's in it or not, I actually don't have the map in front of me.
Still under question?
I don't know. Well, it shouldn't be too much of a question on whether it's floodplain or not, but.
It is.
I can answer that. I can answer that if you'd like.
Go ahead.
There is a floodplain out there. However, the project is not proposed to be within the floodplain. The floodplain is pretty much at the toe of the slope that's out there. And so there's no work proposed in that area. There's a minor, I think it's one of the retaining walls or one of the actual spillways for one of the structures that disturbs about 400 square feet of that flood zone. But that's going to be replicated or compensated for on that same property. So it's a very, very minor alteration within the flood zone that's proposed to be compensated for as part of the overall project design.
Okay.
Lenore White is a consultant for this commission.
Yes,
Lenore
I'm
White
sorry.
is a consultant for this commission.
She's a wetlands consultant.
Okay, all right, so there's flagging's being done, it's being presented to the DEP, has nothing yet, or I know some things have been filed with the DEP, I don't know if anything's come back yet. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, Lenore, any thoughts on that?
Yes, everyone that files a notice of intent sends a copy of that notice of intent to DEP, and DEP issues a file number. And it's my understanding that they have indeed issued that file number. So
Okay.
that's it for them. That's all they'll do at this point. If there is an appeal of the project, then DEP would get involved. But right now, there's no appeal, there's been no decision, and therefore DEP has no real role at this point.
Okay, I noticed they were still digging test holes, so I was under the assumption this was gonna be continued anyway, this meeting, because they're still digging holes over there, so I don't know if that's, they're checking water tables, something's gonna be monitored. Are we monitoring the water table now? For the,
We have not heard, anything that has come in has been shared with the commission. Really, there's nothing new at this point, and maybe that is the reason they've continued, but we don't actually know the reason, so. Yeah.
okay, something probably gonna be sent later. I just think all the information should be in before somebody's making decisions on what's going on. And also, so I see there's a 100-foot buffer that actually touches one of the buildings that's gonna be constructed there. 25 buffer, 50 buffer, 100 buffer. What exactly is the law for the wetland, for the distance from a no-touch to a no-build zone? What, because I know Rivers is different, but I also know that that's a wetland. It's considered a wetland, and it's also a breeding ground. So what is the no-touch, no-build?
Well, basically, right, so basically, you have, the 25, 15, 100 are really just simply easy markations. Typically, these things are flagged, right, so we know where they are before the project begins. We basically, if we go out there and we actually see that, or we have questions about the flagging, we have questions about, say, lines that were drawn previous to the current date, maybe years ago, we will have that all redone, or we will ask the applicant to have that redone, so that the wetland scientists can, like Lenore, can come out and actually walk around and investigate to make sure where those lines are being drawn. But typically, there are things like, for example, if you have an existing structure that sits inside, or just inside, or adjacent to, like a 100-foot buffer, typically those things are grandfathered in, basically. So for example, if someone had a lawn inside the 100-foot, right, or possibly even inside the 50-foot, right? But that was done a long time ago, right? And there's no point in actually making them to essentially rip all that up and just make it go wild. It's basically, it's already done. So that kind of thing you would see the conservation sort of just saying, fine, it's already done, we'll leave it, just don't expand it, that kind of thing. But typically, yes, if you're the closer you get to the wetland, of course, right, the more stringent I should say the higher the level of stringency about what you can and can't do, or what we may be bending the rules. So you'll see the commission basically do like for like. For example, if you say you want to work in a 50 and you want to say increase some space, you have to give us some space and basically let that go wild, right? So you basically sort of like for like. The whole idea is to sort of mitigate, make sure that the actual number of square foot, of the wetlands hasn't changed at all, right? So that's the idea. So you'll see
Which is impossible to do
Yeah.
with the amount of coverage that's over there.
No, I got it. But I'm just saying that, I'm just giving you in general guidelines, how the conservation looks at these kinds of projects, right?
All right, because
So-
I'm just worried about effluent limitations on the pollutants and anything else that might be deleterious to the area.
Right.
You know.
And basically things like, right, like say a drainage plan, for example, would be part and parcel.
Huge, yeah.
Right, be part of the NOI that would have to be filed, for a very large project, for example.
Yeah.
You'll see that, right? Be a huge deal, and you'll get a scientist that's specifically related to outflow, who basically will write up a plan, and that will have to be presented and approved. It'll be reviewed by the wetland scientist, it'll be approved by the commission, right?
So you're saying there's no law that prohibits them from building right up to the 25 feet from the water?
No, you can't do that, of course.
You can't, because,
Well,
like I
no.
said, now, you're within 100 foot is
I mean,
touching the
unless
building.
for some reason, a conservation commission basically says, gives them essentially a one-time deal where you can do that because there's some either mitigating circumstance or some sort of like negotiation that went on or something like that, but typically no. Unless something like that happens, the answer is no, you can't do that.
Any negotiation would be made public, though, right?
That's why we have open meetings.
Okay. And then, last, I'm worried about, honestly worried about the animals that are breeding down there. They're gonna start digging right in the height of the breeding season. So, I want that, because I know, working with conservation commissions for 30 years, I know that they give you a 100-foot buffer, but conservation wants 1,000, you know, more or less. So that's the attitude that I want here. And I want you to understand that, you know, this has got to be some type of protected area, you know, no matter what they build over there.
Well, I mean, again, in classic situation, unfortunately, we don't have an agent right now, right? I mean, Brian is sitting in for the agent. But if we had an actual agent right now, basically, as soon as we do, right, that person, that agent would typically go out, and anyone who had a concern like that would usually, like, say, walk around with the agent and say, look, see, this is what happens here, this is what happens here. They would basically do, as part of that investigation, they'd come back and, you know, provide the commission with those observations and concerns, right?
Yeah.
But they're looking at it through the, you know, an environmental or, you know, a species impact, right?
Yes.
Okay, right, because they have the expertise, that's what they're trained to do.
Yes.
So I'm just saying that that is classically how this would work, right? Right now, unfortunately, we have Brian, but we don't have, you know, an actual agent.
Brian, would Lenore fill this gap?
If there is a specific reason to go out on site to meet with somebody, we certainly will do it.
Right.
We can arrange for Lenore to go out on site.
And I can also, and this is something that this commission got away from, but it used to do a lot, is we used to do site visits all the time. In fact, 3 generations ago, back when I first started, we were actually probably going out like almost every other weekend and talking to applicants, and applicants were actually showing us specific things, right? Again, we've gotten away from that, you know, because we really haven't had to do that with modern technology. But, I mean, we can always, an applicant or someone, an interested party can always request that to be done.
Okay.
So, I mean,
All right.
you know,
No,
because we're
that's
supposed to be working with the citizens, right?
very
You know,
important to me, yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
right? So, you know,
All right.
we work for the town, but the town works for the citizens.
I appreciate
I
that.
mean, so,
Okay, and of course, well, like I said, they're doing some tests over there, so I'm sure they're gonna come up with some groundwater testing, and, you know, I'd
Or
like
they
to see
could be- they could
the
be actually-
latest and the greatest.
they also could be analyzing soils, right? Like, for example, if somebody or someone had a question about, like, you know, again, the flags, like, in other words, where, you know, you basically migrate away from, you know, basically upland to
Yeah.
vegetative, you know, basically, so the soils will change, right? You might actually dig holes to take core samples, actually look at those soils and analyze that, or environmental scientists would analyze that, to actually make those determinations. Where does that change start? Because maybe, these flags really need to move like this way about 10 feet, because over time, since the last time this thing was flagged, the soils have all changed, right? So now the flags, the borders have now changed, right? So these are the kinds of things that come in that are done on sites like this where there are questions.
Okay. All right, thanks for your time, appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? Okay, so, Brian, do we have a date and time for continuance?
I recommend January 20 at 7:01 PM.
We don't need to close it, so we just need to have a motion for the continuance, right?
Right.
Okay. Can I have a motion for the continuance of Washington Street to January 7th? I'm sorry, January 20th, right?
Got it.
That's 7:01.
So moved?
May I have a second?
I second that.
Thank you. Put to a vote. Mr. Johnson, do you vote to approve the continuance?
No, I don't. I vote in favor of it.
Thanks. Patrick?
Pat Gallagher, I vote to continue.
All right.
It didn't come out when I did it.
Jeff Livingston, I vote to continue.
Andrew?
Andrew Mazzucchelli, I vote to continue.
And Jeff Milne, I also vote to continue. So we're continuing Washington Street to January 20th, 7:01. So I'm going to move on to the second NOI on the agenda for 10 Populatic Street.
Okay, again, as with the last public hearing, the applicant for 10 Populatic contacted the town within the last 24 hours and asked for a continuance until the next available spot.
Yes, Brian. Being a public hearing, does anybody wish to speak to 10 Populatic? Okay. So January 20th 702.
Correct.
Okay, may I have a motion for continuing?
I'll make a motion to continue 10 Populatic to, what was it, 20,
January 20th, 702.
January 27th at 7:02.
Thank you, sir.
This is Andrew Mazzucchelli. I second that.
Okay, I'll put it up to a vote. Mr. Johnson, do you approve?
I approve.
Thank you, sir. Patrick?
Pat Gallagher, I vote to continue.
Thank you, sir. Jeff?
Jeff Livingston, vote to continue.
Andrew?
Andrew Mazzucchelli, I vote to continue.
And Jeff Milne, I also vote to continue. So that finishes up the NOI for tonight for 10 Populatic Street. And we move on to the third item on the public hearings, an RDA for Countryside Lane. Brian, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, thank you. While our temporary acting agent, Becca Solomon, was here, she actually did do a site visit and recommends a negative determination that it's exempt activity. And even though there may be wetland resources, the fact is it is a drainage structure, and the maintenance, it was not done as timely as it probably should have been. So the applicant would like to get out there and do the maintenance that's required to keep the system running fine, so.
Right, and that's consistent with what we've done in the past.
Is anybody here representing Countryside Lane?
I'm Joe Dorico, I'm the owner of the subdivision.
Okay. Do you wish to speak at all?
If you need me to, I'll be happy to tell you that if you can hear me.
Well, if
It's,
you just sign in for us, sir.
Yeah, it's on the Prospect Street, September Drive and Countryside Lane. And it's an infiltration basin that DPW wanted me to perform some maintenance on. And I noticed some plans and spoke to Becca. And that's why I'm here. She went out.
This is something that's a very common thing. It comes up all the time.
Right.
I mean, all the time. Retention basins overgrow and they
Right.
grow, they look like wetlands and basically, yeah.
Well, that's,
I'm
I'm finishing it up and eventually this year getting ready to turn it over to Franklin with the roadway.
Any of the commissioners have any thoughts or concerns? Patrick Gallagher, any thoughts?
Pat Gallagher, no, I didn't have any questions. Everything looks fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson?
I have no questions.
Mr. Andrew?
I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you.
And Jeff Milne, also no questions. So I'll take a motion to close the hearing.
Motion to close?
Andrew Mazzucchelli, I second.
Very good, thank you. And I'll accept a motion to approve the RDA for Countryside.
We have to vote to close.
Oh, vote
We have to vote to
to,
close.
sorry, vote to close. Patrick? We're voting to.
Pat Gallagher, I vote to close the hearing.
Okay, Bob Johnson?
I vote to close the hearing.
Andrew?
Andrew Mazzucchelli, I vote to close.
Jeff Nolan, I also vote to close.
Jeff Livingston, a vote to close?
Thank you very much. So now I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved?
Andrew Mazzucchelli, I second that.
Very good. Putting up for a vote. Bob Johnson, how do you approve?
I vote to approve.
Pat?
Richard Johnson.
Oh, I'm sorry, Richard Johnson. Sorry.
Pat Gallagher, I vote to approve.
Andrew?
Andrew Mazzucchelli, I vote to approve.
And just to be clear, we're approving the -5 determination.
Right.
Correct.
And Jeff Mullen, I also vote to approve. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen. Happy New Year.
Jeff, can you give me a bio break 2 minutes?
Yes. We're going to take a short bio break.
Good luck.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Okay, moving on to the agenda to general business. Minor buffer zone activities, I don't see anything listed under that. Permit modifications, extensions, I don't see anything under that category. So moving on to certificates of compliance, 2.3.1 Georgia Drive. Anybody here representing 4 Georgia Drive? Brian, what do we have?
Well, I can talk about it for a minute. The Georgia Drive, they're looking for a certificate of compliance, some construction of retaining walls on their property. And Lenore from WSI conducted a site visit today and would like to give you a little bit of a summary.
Great. Hi, Lenore.
Hello, how are you doing?
Doing good.
I was out there, I was out there this, today, and I spoke briefly with the homeowner, and it reviewed the back of the property. I could share some photos with you if you'd like to see some photos.
Sure.
You know, I don't know. I thought I could get in my, I don't have them on my phone. I have them on my email. I don't see my email here. No, I can't do it.
Okay.
I apologize. It's on my email. For some reason, I thought I could share those on my email. But it looked fine out there today. The as-built plan was submitted along with the request. And the as-built plan showed that one of the walls was closer to the wetland, but only by a few feet. And it was work that was permitted within the 25 to 50-foot buffer zone. So some of the work encroached a little bit further within that 50-foot buffer zone. However, there wasn't any work beyond the 25 feet. In other words, all the activity stayed out of that. So I would recommend a certificate of compliance for that project. The only thing I did note was it's not unusual. A lot of property owners seem to use the back property, which is oftentimes wetlands, as an area to dispose of leaf litter and grass clippings and that sort of thing. So I did see some of that out there today, and I'm not sure, being relatively new to the commission's policies and practices, whether that dumping, and placement of sort of organic light material is something that the Concom takes issue with, or generally they don't. So that was the only issue that I saw there today. And like I said, I would recommend a certificate of compliance.
Commissioners?
Video is sponsored by Columbia Sportswear.
Pardon me, did someone have a question?
No, it's all right, Lenore. So I would just like to say that I agree with Lenore, what she was saying about the certificate of compliance. I did see the pictures. The area of, everything's been, restored. Everything is back to normal. There's nothing eroding. Everything's fine. But there had been some dumping in wetland areas, grass clippings and leaves, but not excessive. So what I would recommend is that I reach out to them as we tell them they have their certificate of compliance, that they also I'd like to meet them out there and talk about the problems they have with their leaves in the wetland areas. And if they, I don't believe, it should be a relatively minor issue to get in there with just to rake a few things out of there pretty quickly, and I don't think it's going to be a big ordeal. It was not like there were mountains of
Huge
stuff in
piles
there.
of-
Right, exactly. So
Like some landscaper would have liked, yeah.
yeah. So there are plenty of places in town where people really do excessive dumping, but this is not one of those. I will talk with the property owner if that's okay with the commission.
Jeff, any thoughts?
No, I agree.
Richard?
I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Richard?
No comments.
And Patrick?
Yep, that approach is fine with me.
And Jeff Milne also have no comments. So I guess I'll take a motion to approve the certificate of compliance, I guess with the amendment that Brian discussed, the the leaf issue with the owner?
Yeah, basically, that Brian's gonna have a discussion with it, right, about the yard waste, yeah, okay. Yep, so moved.
I second that, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Richard?
I vote yes on that. Richard Johnson.
Thank you. Patrick?
Pat Gallagher, I vote to approve.
And this is Jeff Milne. I also vote to approve. So we're all set for the certificate of compliance for Georgia Drive. Brings me down to the next item of general business, violations and enforcements. And we have on the agenda 27 Sophia Circle. Anybody representing? Yes. Would you like to sign in, please? Hi, and you are?
My name is Paul D. Simone with Colonial Engineering,
Hi, Paul.
and I want to bring you back a few steps on this. My client called us because he was either, I can't remember if he was refinancing or selling. His house was built in the early 90s. He had an order of conditions, recorded at the registry. So, of course, when they were doing the title search, they came into that. So we went out, we did a topography of the lot, located the structure, driveway, all the groundwork. His driveway, the order of conditions was for his driveway to go through a wetland area, to fill it, and then replicate a small area off to the side to compensate for that. Okay, after we did the topography and all the work out there, I met with, I can't remember the girl's name.
Becca or?
She was pregnant at the time.
Oh, Jen.
Okay.
Jen.
She came out to the site, I walked it with her, I said, what do you want us to do? They did not do the replication area, okay? So she said, well, you gotta file a notice of intent. And I said, well, at the time, I said, DEP kind of frowns on having two open numbers on the same site, okay? I mean, I've dealt with this before, and they don't like that. So I said, well, why don't I just file a certificate of compliance, and then we'll file a notice of intent. So we did, and of course you denied the certificate of compliance, which I understood that was gonna happen. And then I get a call from another girl, I don't remember her name.
Becca.
And I met with her, and I said, now we're getting into November. I said, what do you want me to do? And she said, well, how about if we issue an enforcement order, and you just fix the problem? And I said, I agreed. I said, if someone had told me that 3 months ago, we'd have plantings in by now. So we drew a plan to replicate. The area is about 204 square feet, 20 by 10. It's very small. Because what happened was when they filled the driveway, and they filled in about 978 square feet of wetlands. I had my wetland scientist go out there and flag the new wetland line. Second girl wanted me to do that. I'm not sure which one. But anyways, we reflagged the line, and we picked up an additional 750 square feet of wetlands that was not on the original plan. So the wetlands actually got bigger. So after I had my discussion with her, I said, well, now you're looking at like 204 square feet. And she agreed. She goes, yeah, that's about it. So we drew a plan to replicate 204 square feet with some plants, which obviously we can't do until the spring. And she was fine with that. And then she's gone now, I guess, right? So I couldn't talk to her. So, but anyways, the problem I'm gonna have when we go to build this is that she couldn't help me, and the other girl couldn't help me. My own wetland scientist couldn't help me, was because the wetland soils were wherever that were filled. Usually you take the soils out, stockpile it, and use that for your replication area. We don't have that. So I've been asking around, where do I get wetland soils, actual wetland soils that will grow wetland plants? And I've yet to get an answer. So my wetland scientist is telling me that this will probably not work. This small area, about 204 square feet. She goes, you can dig out whatever material is there and get down to some type of loam or organic stuff and plant them, but she said, chances are wetland plants may not grow.
Brian?
So I'm kind of stuck there.
Can I throw this at Lenore?
Well, I think, I don't think Lenore actually reviewed this. This was before.
Yeah.
Okay. But I do know that in Becca's notes on it, the plan notes that the current area would be brought down to an elevation of 187 and filled back with wetland soil up to 187.5. So you're putting in 6 inches of soil, of wetland soil, and basically you're saying you don't know where to get the wetland soil, is it?
If you can help me, I'm all ears.
I see what you're saying, okay.
So, but I use the conservation agent over in Westwood, and I usually use for these type of hard things. And she's been looking around now for 2 or 3 months, and she cannot help me get wetland soils. I mean, she's a pro.
Well, let me ask Lenore, have you had any experience with locating wetland soils, Lenore?
Yeah, some. Generally speaking, wetland soils are a mixture of organic, I mean, like you said, Brian, organic and mineral. So a lot of times landscape yards can make up a mix. And a lot of times, actually in the DEP guidance, they recommend using clean leaf litter. And you mix that in with mineral soils to a concentration that's similar to what you'd find in wetland soils. So a lot of landscapers can provide it. Generally speaking, something that's small, however, they don't do it because a lot of times, like there's a big company too out of Salem, AgriSource, and they can produce it as well, but they produce it by the truckload for large projects. So trying to find a small amount, it's not easy, but you might check around with local landscapers because they might be able to provide you with something that would accommodate a wetland plan community.
I can do that. Because my guys are stumped. It's like, it's typically you take the soil and you stockpile it and use it and it works.
Right.
Right.
And you're planting wetland plants in an area that really doesn't have the soils. It's just not gonna work. But I will call around and ask.
Any of the commissioners have any thoughts they want to share?
I have nothing, thank you.
Can I just clarify, is this something, and I'm sorry if you mentioned this and I misheard, is this something that is tied to the sale of the home, or has the sale happened, or what's the status?
I'm sorry. When he contacted me to do the work, I can't remember if he was selling the house or if he was refinancing. But he came up in the title search.
Okay. Just making sure, I want to be sensitive if there's something that we can or, can do, or if something's being held up by this, given that, it's January right now and nothing is happening on the ground for a few months at least. So if there's anything we can do in the interim, whether to approve this plan subject to a condition that, in the next 3 months, you locate the necessary wetland soil or something of that nature.
I don't know, that would be throwing it under the responsibility of a new owner possibly, in that we need to do a little bit more. Maybe the applicant needs to get back to us on and request something of that nature. If they're not selling the building right now, then maybe they can wait. I know that if they want to refinance and take it, that's one thing, but I think if they did need to sell and they've been, waiting to sell the property for this, we don't want to slow them up, but at the same time, I don't know.
I did inform them that there's nothing we can do until the spring anyways. We just can't do it. If the first girl I talked to had given me the second girl's advice, back in June and July, we may have gotten something on the ground to get that.
Can I suggest maybe if we continue this to the next meeting, and I think it would be helpful in the next couple of weeks if you're able to come up with kind of what the specific request is that we would be voting on, what specifically you need from us, and any more details you have on what the homeowner needs in practice here.
Well, we have a plan in place to replicate a total of 10 plants in that 204 square foot area. So we do have a plan in place to do something. And I informed the owners that it can't be done until the spring. So I don't really think you can do anything at this point, to be honest with you.
One note before you, on this, one thing that Becca did leave in her notes, it is recommended that the plan be revised to include monitoring periods and expected mortality of the plantings. Now, not being a wetland scientist, I'm not going to pretend I know what she's talking about, but that is what she wrote. Maybe Lenore would like to interpret, if she possibly could, I don't know.
I can try, Brian.
Thank you.
Generally speaking, when there's a restoration project, it does get monitored for at least 2 growing seasons. And one of the things you look for is whether or not any of the plants have died. And if they've died, generally the Conservation Commission would want to see them replaced. So I suspect Becca's notes were saying, yes, we need a monitoring plan with, a part of the plan to include evaluation of whether or not any of the plants don't thrive over the growing season.
Well, I think there's isn't there a regulation by at 1 year or something like that, a certain number of plants have got to survive? Is it like 60% or 70% or something like that? I thought
Yeah.
Yeah, some sort of rule.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Before you issue a certificate of compliance, the regulations, at least under DEP's regulations, say that you have to have at least 50% of it vegetated, and 75% of that vegetation has to be wetland vegetation. So it's, yeah.
Okay. So we're a long way away from issuing a certificate of compliance. Actually, we're still dealing with the enforcement order. So number one is to figure out whether or not you can get the soil that you need. And number two, what is the owner's timetable here? And whether or not it's anything that we can do to assist or, help, in that regards. I'm kind of seeing a continuation here.
Yeah, I would maybe suggest if we can continue, and maybe if this is something that, Lenore, if you're able to look at the enforcement order and just give a little bit of clarity as to, I think I guess I'm just not sure what specifically we are being asked to vote on. And so that would be helpful just to know what's needed and maybe to know from the homeowner, what the homeowner's needs are and if there is any flexibility on timing here, given that it's January now.
I would just suggest the applicant's representative find out the answers, more details, and come back to the commission or send it to Brian, basically. Notify, we'll work with Brian.
Okay.
We'll work with Brian to give us the information I'm looking for.
Did you hear Jeff's
No,
comments?
What I'm saying is that, what I suggest is basically work with the applicant to get some of the detail, some of these answers, these questions answered, and maybe send the answers back to Brian, so Brian can share them with the commission.
Any other?
Acting agent, yeah.
Yeah, I'm the acting. Hopefully we'll have somebody in here soon.
Is the other girl coming back? Is the first girl coming back?
Jen Delmore is the actual agent who's out on maternity,
Right.
and our temporary person actually took a full-time position, so she's not here right now. But I've had Lenore went from WSI helping on site visits to help me out for a little while until we get something straightened out.
Like I said, I agree to the second girl's idea of becoming an enforcement order and just fix the mess with getting there, that's the other thing.
Sorry.
Sounds like a plan.
Alrighty, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Have a good night.
Don't be afraid to call us, and talk about whatever the needs are, because obviously you need to get some soil, and then you need to change the plans a little bit to reflect the monitoring.
Yep. Well, that was a good idea by her. Call local
Yeah.
landscape guys, never even thought of that. I'm trying to look for professionals that would know, that deal with this stuff.
Well, there
Struck out.
are people that actually there are people that deal with wild, like native plants, right? The garden continuum, like Monique's place.
Yeah.
You might want to call her. She would absolutely know. She would know before anybody would know. So
All right,
yeah,
thank
call
you very
Monique
much.
and the garden continuum. Yeah.
Oh, and the owners are worried about getting fined and stuff, and I tried to explain to them, says, we can't do anything till the spring, so.
No, we know that.
I don't think you
No,
guys-
we know that. We know that. Yeah.
No, you're not bad.
No, 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 no.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to minutes. We have 2 minutes on the agenda for December 2nd and December 16th. Brian, was there any concerns on those minutes from your perspective?
Not from my perspective.
Did you, motion, can you approve both of them at the same time or individually?
Individually.
All right, I'll take a motion to approve December 2nd, 2021 minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes for December 2nd?
Yep.
We do them independently.
Okay,
Andy Mazzucchelli, I second that.
all right. Mr. Richard,
Richard Johnson votes to approve.
Mr. Patrick,
Pat Gallagher, I vote to approve.
and Jeff Milne, I also vote to approve. Moving on to December 16th, 2021.
Andy Mazzucchelli, I vote to approve the December 16th, 2021, the board meetings.
Thank you, sir. Jeff?
I vote to approve.
All right, Patrick,
Pat Gallagher, I vote to approve.
Richard,
Richard Johnson votes to approve.
and Jeff Milne also votes to approve. So we have approval for both the December 2nd and December 16th minutes. Okay, moving on to discussions. Administration approval for 38 Miller Street.
Yeah, so there are two in front of you. They were approved. Both of them are very similar. Both were owners looking to remove 4 trees in their yard. The first was a minor buffer zone area, and the agent went out, saw that the trees she believed they presented an immediate hazard, and gave administrative approval for the removal of the trees with the condition that the stumps would remain, and he wouldn't take either out of the buffer zone or off the property. So that one, pretty straightforward. I imagine if we ever have a rough winter, we'll be doing that a lot in the near future, so.
Yep.
The second, if you'd like just to go into that, it's, like I said, it's very similar. Of the 4 trees, one had been wind thrown and was being held up only by another proposed for removal, which was hollow and suffering from severe rot. The other 2 were additionally leaning towards the house due to the immediate risk of the trees failing and damage to the property, and resident safety administrative approval was granted, again with the condition that the stumps be left and it would be removed from the property. So that's about it. That's normal business. We'll have a couple more of those in the very near future. Yes.
Any commissioners have any thoughts or concerns about these 2 administrative approvals? All right, we need to approve? No. No, okay. Brian, moving to the last, update on Spring Street RDA on tree removal?
I don't even know where I'm looking here. This one.
I don't think I saw it on the original.
No, it's not on the notes.
Original, I just saw it on the
It's on
agenda.
the agenda, yeah. That's something that was added late.
Spring Street. I'm looking for it. Let's see. Oh, this is the, okay, yeah. Yeah, we did add this onto the agenda, and I don't see it on the current one, but I'm sorry. So under general business, I can just tell you a little bit about it. National Grid sent us a letter, they commissioned a letter, related to the work that is going on, the solar farm up that way, and everything. They needed to do some tree removal on the actual roadway, which you did have they did file in previously. But this is an additional area, and they wanted us aware that they were doing this additional work, and they believed that, I'll give you the terminology, their belief. Dry fingers here. There we go. Therefore, they're planning to remove this work, perform the work as exempt maintenance in accordance with provision of the Wetlands Protection Act 131.4, implement, and the implementing regulations. So I actually took a ride out. It doesn't appear to be, I mean, it's literally, it is maintenance, it's nothing to do, but this is an FYI. If we had any problems with it, we could contact them, but I don't think I would. They're hoping that just the town will say thank you very much instead of filing anything formal again. They did provide in a diagram where the work would be happening.
No, it's basically an extension of existing project.
It's tree removal, adding a pole kind of thing.
Yeah. So my other concern is Spring Street is a scenic byway, whether or not that impacts this decision at all.
The trees, any trees that are removed on that roadway are coordinated with the DPW, who's the tree warden, the DPW director. I don't know if this specific thing has gone to him or not, but I know that they talked about other trees on the roadway.
I mean, for conservation purposes, and maybe if Lenore is still on, she can just confirm this, but I believe what they're saying in the letter sounds to be correct, that I think that type of work is exempt from regulation under the Wetland Protection Act.
She may not want to confirm that. I'm kidding, joking. She's probably not.
Sorry, you're on mute. No.
Yeah, that's, did you hear me?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
There you are.
Okay, yeah, right-of-way work is generally exempt, so I don't know if this is associated with right-of-way work, but there are, exemptions for that kind of work. And it sounds like you folks have permitted some of it, and so this is just an additional area. I wasn't sure from the conversation that the additional area was within a wetland or within the wetland buffer zone. And they were just simply notifying you as a, a
We
route,
permitted the
course of
solar
action.
farm upstream from Spring Street.
I don't know the area well enough to know.
Yeah. So you permitted this, you permitted that project, and this is the electrical feed essentially to the property. You had to upgrade all their poles and everything. So that is part of that project, and when they were planning this, the feed out essentially, they're in a wetland area, but they believe it to be, because they already have electric lines up there, they're replacing what's there essentially, adding a pole or two and things of that nature. So,
And there's a lot of old ancient trees along that street.
yes, there are, yes, yeah. I will make a copy of this and I'll send it to the DPW director for his input, but I think as far as commission's concerned, if you agree that it is regular maintenance and it's exempt, then it's, would be.
Yep.
Okay?
And I walk down that street all the time, I hate to see the character of that street change, but it is regular maintenance.
Understood.
Anything else for tonight?
I do not.
Okay, can I have a motion to close?
Undebatable.
I second.
Richard?
All right, guys, motion to close. Vote to
Okay.
close.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah,
Have a good night.
good night.
Good night.
Recording stopped.
Thank you, Lenore.